you on set?
I visited a lot. Now, sometimes people exaggerate the power of the screenwriter. I mean, basically, once production has started, the screenwriter is irrelevant. But I was a kind of an honoured guest there. And, you know, I had a director's chair with my name on it in letters-set, though one of the letters had fallen off. But I was still just so happy to be let in the door, even. I was like an anthropologist. I went around saying to everybody, so your grip, what does a grip do?
So, like, once you get into intense character creation, sometimes actors will, you know, improvise or create new things. Was any of that done on this film?
Definitely, because Lenny Abrahamson, our director, he has a very naturalistic aesthetic. So quite often, I'd have written the scene one way, but then, especially with the child, I mean, Jacob was 7 when we started filming. Often to get a really natural effect, you'd get him and Ma running the lines in a slightly improvised way. And weirdly enough, I thought I would deeply fear all that kind of carry on, but I really liked what they came up with. And also I was getting to see it night by night by watching the dailies on a website. I hadn't realised I'd be given that kind of access. So quite often I'd watch the day's footage and I'd go, they came up with some good stuff there, I hope they use it. Even the actors in smaller roles, for instance, Wendy Crewson, who plays the TV hostess, on the day she said to the director, oh, I wonder if I could ask her a question about whether she'd ever considered committing suicide. You know, so that was a great idea. So yeah, I found that all these actors really, they owned their roles and they poured their hearts into them and did extra research and reading, and so I felt quite safe leaving the characters in their hands. But it wasn't just the actors who contributed extra things to the script. We had our editor there from the beginning, so he was editing in a back room as we went along. And because we were filming it more or less in sequence, which is very unusual and it's a very expensive way to work, he could actually sort of build the story as we went along. And halfway through he said, you know what, that whole section you've got in the police station, you don't need that. So we just didn't film it. So, you know, all sorts of people made really crucial contributions to it. You know, I don't in any way feel I own the film or even own the screenplay. I feel I was one member of a big team.
It's like I said, it's really one of the things that A24 is doing that makes so much sense, is to, you know, not to say, okay, this is a Hollywood movie, you've got to film, it's much less expensive to film this after this. You know, to get that kind of performance, to get those kinds of performances, how would you not film in sequence? I mean, it's so essential. I
know, and Lenny enjoyed it so much that he said he's going to try and make it his trademark from now on. You know, if you want me, we film in sequence. I was just talking to Jesse from A24 last night, and he said, we've found that if we get too hands-on at an early stage, we do nothing but harm, basically, because even if all these film executives individually have great taste, as soon as 20 people are commenting on a script, there's a homogenization there. It's designed by committee. So I think they've learned to be really delicate about letting the creativity happen and then only having input, you know, at the point where it's appropriate.
So glad this is happening. We need more good movies.
This one has been such a pleasure to me, and you know, I kept expecting to have that, you know, traditional bruising encounter of the writer with the film business. You know, the moment when you realise they betrayed you and changed the ending. You know, the moment when they do a test screening and destroy it all. Never happened. I mean, here's an example. They did test screenings, and I got nervous when I heard that, and they said, no, we're not going to change the movie. We just want to know how to market it based on what people say in the test screenings. So, yeah, the whole thing was very smartly made, and I feel nobody kind of, you know, disturbed the little magic circle of the creative team.
Wow. Yeah, and it's so good that, I mean, I'm thinking, I'll probably win a bunch of awards and all that kind of stuff. Maybe it'll help to, you know, change the way that movies are made, and this is a dream that we can all share, I think, because it's a really terrific movie. I wonder if we have any questions from our audience. Right back here.
Hi, I was wondering, as the writer, how involved you were in the pre-production process, if you had a say in choosing director, if you got to work with him, or in picking the cast, just how involved you were in the process?
Really, my one power was to not sell the rights until the right director came along. Yeah, as the owner of the book, so you don't really have any powers as the screenwriter, but as the owner of the book, I felt a bit like an 18th century lady with a handsome property, including a lake, you know. Like you just know as soon as the honeymoon happens, you'll be crying on a sofa. So I thought, okay, mustn't say yes until the right director comes along. And I got a lot of, I mean, I'm not saying lots of big names asked to do it, they didn't, but there were a lot of nibbles from producers and directors and actors, but they were never quite the right nibbles. And I felt this film could so easily be dreadful. You know, it could easily go in the direction of voyeuristic and nasty, or in the direction of really sentimental. So I felt that somebody had to steer it with perfect taste down the middle. And you know, for quite a while I thought, you know, the right person's not coming along, you know, it's never going to happen. And then Lenny Abramson wrote me a 10-page letter describing how he would do it. And the combination of his massive enthusiasm for the book and also an appreciation of the oddity of the book, he didn't mind the fact that it's in two halves and that, you know, what looks like the climax, the escape, comes right in the middle. He didn't mind any of that. He wasn't scared off by, you know, the breastfeeding or the long hair or any of the, you know, touchy elements. But also he had such a confident vision for how he would film it. I mean, in his initial letter, he plunged straight into describing the camera work he would use in the little scene where Ma's having a sort of depressed day and keeps her head under the pillow and Jack goes about making his breakfast. So Lenny just plunged in with how he would do it instead of being all like, my people will do lunch with your people. And we're both from Dublin, so I think that helped. There's a directness there, and we have a sort of mutual language. If you're from Ireland, you mock each other. In order to feel like friends, you just relentlessly make fun of each other. So there was a very easy rapport there. So all in all, I had a really untypical time of it.
What's so special, I think, about the direction is that it would be incredible just as camera direction, just to make that room feel so tangible. Like, that would be enough. And then to make the outside world seem so open and different. But then to get those performances, like, that's really special. Because often a director is either a great performance director or a great kind of, you know, setting director. But this has so much both. Could you have imagined that you would have gotten such a great kid performance?
Well, that was the great unknown. I mean, I was writing the role as if for, you know, a child genius, and we never dumbed it down. You know, we never thought, oh, fewer words or keep it simpler. You know, we just wrote it on the assumption that the child was out there. And Lenny kept saying to me, oh, yes, yes, we'll find him, don't worry, there are specialist child casting agents. You know, what did I know? And also, we couldn't cast the child too early because they grow big teeth. That's a dangerous age for big teeth. I was watching Jacob's mouth like a hawk, ready with the pliers, you know. But no teeth were extracted in the making of this film. But yeah, the age range we could cast was really very limited. We couldn't look any older than, say, 8. And yeah, when we started finally casting him just a few months before, to answer your question, sir, I was consulted in things like where to make the film and the casting and the design and stuff, but I knew not to abuse my powers, you know, because really it's the director's film. I feel that very strongly. So in casting, it was kind of like being in on a great fantasy football game, you know, like we'd say, oh, let's look at all the actresses who could play the grandmother, you know, or let's look at, you know, all the character actors with really distinctive faces who could play the police officer, you know. So yeah, we looked at, Lenny, the director, through his casting agents, he looked at really hundreds and hundreds of boys, and lots of great talent there, but I have to say that Jacob really stood out for his confidence. He had done a bit of filming before, he'd done some commercials and a voice role in the Smurfs too, so it's not so much that he had the acting skills, but he had this kind of, you know, playful and relaxed attitude to the camera. I remember in his audition tape, you know, he did the scene and then he was like, can I try the voiceover? So he finds it fun, and that's crucial, because if a child didn't find it fun, it would have been a long 49 days of constant filming with him in every single scene. It's quite a long shoot, and he had to spend days on end in the wardrobe, getting the angles just right, or rolled up in the rug. So he had to be the kind of kid who, you know, when you say, oh, your break time's up, come do another take, he's like, yippee, you know.
Right over here.
Hi, you talk about how you chose the director. How did you and A24 choose each other?
I think A24 came on board to buy distribution rights to the film at the script stage, so very early on. Yeah, so they really invested in it. I mean, the money basically comes from the Irish government, because I'm Irish and Lenny's Irish, and we did post-production in Dublin. And then the Canadian government, because I'm Canadian and we filmed it in Canada and cast mostly Canadians. We were only allowed 2 and a bit Americans. So it was all a bit nerve-wracking, because of course, if the child was going to be American, we couldn't have already given away our 2 big American roles, you know, so there was a lot of juggling. But luckily, Jacob is from Vancouver, so we were allowed Brie and Joan, and then William Macy's part counts as a cameo. But anyway, he does a lot with it though. Yes, A24 then were the third major investor. So I knew so little about the film business that I had rather assumed that you've got to have some big sinister studio step in at some point. And you know, when all the pieces came together, I was thinking, we have our budget and there's no big sinister studio stepping in. So really, yeah, films are put together in all sorts of ways these days. I really had a very old-fashioned idea of how they're done, and it's left me with a very optimistic vision of the many ways that films can be funded and can be originated these days. And sometimes they even let the novelist write the screenplay. It's amazing.
Right over here.
Yeah, so the time between in which your book was published and the screenplay was first written, I mean, did you reach a point where you felt like did you take any extra like liberties with the script? I mean, did you go back on your original publication and say...
There was no real time lag because I wrote the novel and sold it, and then there's always about a year where you're just waiting around for it to be published, and I thought, I'll have a bash at the screenplay before the book's published. Because I knew there was going to be some fuss once it was published because my publishers were, you know, making big noises. So I thought, you know, I don't want people telling me what to do or telling me that I should give it to some much more experienced screenwriter. So, you know, in the quiet before the storm, I'll just have a bash at it myself. So that was very enjoyable writing it that way to start with. But of course it went through then many drafts as soon as I was working with Lenny's Irish company, Element. And you know, it never went through one of those transformations where they say, let's move it to a new level by setting it in, you know, 2099, or, you know, none of those big Hollywood ideas to transform the whole thing. I would say I already in my first draft had changed a lot from the book because, for instance, in the second half of the book, you meet a lot of new characters. Jack even meets his grandmother's book club. You know, there's new characters every few pages. So that just wouldn't have worked for a film. So the first thing I did was whittle down Ma's family so she no longer has a brother and his family, like in the book, for instance. And also in the second half of the book, you know, they go to a Shakespeare play, they go to a cathedral, they go to the beach, lots of different locations, and it's very episodic. So again, I really tried to carve a lot of the detail away and really just follow the story of Jack and Ma and how they adjust to the new life. And that has the advantage that the storyline of Ma's relationship with her mother in particular really comes forward as everything else is carved away. But I would say I had made all those changes. Just when I was then started working over several more drafts with the director, he made a lot of it more, he pushed me to make it more naturalistic. Because of course in the book it's all through Jack's mind. So he's reporting on everything and he doesn't, you know, see how grubby and dirty the room is. Whereas as soon as you're filming, you know, that the camera has a certain objectivity, even if you flavour it with the child's perspective. So we pushed, I would say, the dialogue more towards sort of messy naturalism. But there were no huge changes, and always, you know, the proportions, the kind of bone structure of the book remained the same with the escape in the middle. No major plot twists or anything. So I think it was quite a subtle job that Lenny did to push my screenplay towards where he wanted it to go. There were no big startling changes. And it's funny, everybody assumes the first half would be the hardest, but that hardly changed at all in the writing. It was the bit we always struggled with was when they've come back to the house and the gradual falling apart of Ma, because you don't want to signal it too dramatically. You don't want her, you know, sleepwalking around the house. But you can't lose that thread either of her, you know, sort of path downhill. So yeah, the outside proved to be much trickier to write than the inside, oddly enough. And even trickier to film. As long as we were in the tiny little set, you know, the crew were starting to say, oh God, we've been weeks here, you know, looking forward to being out in the open, but then as soon as we were outside, the sort of coziness was gone, you know.
Let's take a couple more questions here. Who else has a question here? I think we're really rocking with this Q&A, so let's keep it going, you guys. Right back here.
Okay. So I was wondering if this was your first foray into screenwriting, what was the biggest challenge in adapting your own work? And then also, based on the really wonderful experience and the really wonderful movie that has been made out of this great book, if you are casting an eye over any of your other novels that you're itching to try it again.
It's not the first screenplay I've written. Like most authors, I've got a few screenplays that have never been filmed, and so they always felt a bit theoretical. 20 years ago, I was hired to do a film adaptation of my first novel. I now realise I should have said to them, no, it doesn't have enough of a story, you know. So mercifully, that one was never made. And I think I've tried one original screenplay before, but this is the first time it's made it to the screen or felt real. I would love to do it again, but it doesn't have to be my own novels. I mean, I'm just interested in writing for the screen, so I'm interested in adapting other people's work, writing original screenplays, and my own. So yeah, it's not just about my work, it's just I'm finding the process of telling stories on film, you know, fascinating, and it all seems more real now that I've had a bite of the cherry, you know. But I keep saying to myself, it may never be this wonderful an experience again. I mean, the fact that we had a child at the heart of everything, it made everybody behave well, you know. Nobody threw any tantrums, you know. We all worked reasonable hours, and yeah, there was just a sort of humane quality to the whole thing.
Well, I wanted to just say thank you so much for everything, for not only the book, but also writing the movie. And all we ask is that you film your next movie in Texas.
Obviously.
And there are a lot of storylines that you just hang around here for a month or so, and you'll have a lot.
And characters, I imagine you've got a few characters
We have a
too.
few characters. We're about to go meet a few of them at the bar where we're going to grab a pint. Thank you for being here, Emma. Thank you so much. Thanks to Texas Book Festival and Alliance for putting this together. And you guys, what am I saying? Tell them how much you love Room. Thanks very much. Good night.